Shadows are calling, the curtain is drawn. How far we have fallen, I'm out on the run. Live in the violence, die by the sword. Deep in the fire, that's where darkness is born.
Hey friends, welcome back. If I sound a little bit different today, it's because I am recording in a hotel room in Kansas City, Missouri. I think it might be haunted. It's really cool. It's like this old historic Kansas City motel it's got this old vibe. It's in a historical district, but definitely haunted, which I love. But anyways, if I sound different, that's why. Here on a business trip, but I wanted to get on today and I want to talk about a subject I just can't seem to let go of. It's one that keeps circling back in my mind, sometimes obsessively. It's the question of human value. Specifically, why do we value some lives more than others? Why does the disappearance of a blonde, blue-eyed 20-something dominate headlines, while a missing woman of color, someone with children left behind, just gravely affected, it barely even is a blip on the radar? Why do we hand out decade-long sentences for petty crimes, yet we allow men who brutally murder their wives to walk away with plea deals and reduced time? Prosecutors often say they're sparing the family from the trauma of a trial. Like we see this with the Brian Koberger case, right? Like they're like, oh, we don't want to drag the families through the trial. But let's be honest. Most families would rather endure months and months of painful testimony than spend a lifetime knowing that their daughter's killer got a slap on the wrist or like a reduced sentence than what they might have gotten if they faced a jury trial. Because in reality, the families are the ones serving the life sentence. Now, I bounce these thoughts off my husband now and then, not just because he's law enforcement, but because he sees the world through a very different lens than I do. And if there's one thing he'll always do, it's play devil's advocate. And I think even when he agrees with me deep down, he'll take the opposing view just to kind of test the argument, to really suss out every angle. God, I'm making him sound so annoying. He's not. But sometimes I'm just like, hey, babe, can you just agree with me? Half joking, half wishing he'd just give me the W. But the truth is, I actually love this about him. His perspective challenges me. It stretches the way I think, even when it really frustrates me. He sees the world through logic, like really just logic always. And that's not me. I see it through emotion, and somewhere in that tension we find balance. So I asked him, I was like, do you think prosecutors just want the guaranteed win? Like they don't care. I mean, not all of them, but some of them don't care about the victim. They just want the win. And he said, you're looking at this through compassion for the victim and their family. But prosecutors have seen slam dunk cases fall apart over technicalities, like someone not being read their Miranda rights. And 20 years is better than nothing. And so while I get that, after going back and forth with him, I had to say what we often say in our house, which is agree to disagree. Because as much as I understand what he's saying, as much as I know that even the strongest cases can unravel over a technicality or end up in a mistrial or some overlooked detail, I still believe there's something deeply wrong with how quietly these cases are allowed to end. Because I'd rather see a man who brutally murdered his wife forced to sit through every moment of that trial. Not because I believe he's capable of remorse or empathy, or that if he stands up and apologizes to the family that it's actually heartfelt and not some ill attempt at getting the judge to offer leniency, but because I want him to hear the full weight of what he did. Or more so, actually, I want the people supporting him to know. I want him to know the mask is off. The jig is up. No one's buying his bullshit anymore. I want his mother and anyone else still defending him, anyone who enabled him, to hear his threatening texts, the forensic evidence, the truth laid bare. And I want the media to report it. I want the public to bear witness. Because when we let these men quietly plead out, we're not just giving them reduced sentences. We're giving them the chance to start over, to walk out one day remarry, have children to build a second life, and in some cases, to re-victimize and murder again. That silence isn't justice, it's erasure. And today I bring you a case that you won't find much trace of. This woman, despite her Hollywood good looks and the heartbreaking tragedy of it all, her death was met with near silence. A few articles, maybe. Her killer was quietly locked away. No spotlight, no deep dive into who he was or the horror of what he did. And it's another case involving a dual military couple. It's another devastating story that never really made national headlines. There were no reporters outside the courthouse, no viral outrage, no statement from military leadership. If you Google it, there's, a brief mention in a local paper, a passing blurb in a magazine, a few articles, but then nothing. Now, contrast that with the cases that dominate the news cycles. The one where helicopters are hovering over the crime scenes, where courtroom sketches go viral, where every tearful press conference is broadcast live, where the victim's face is everywhere on billboards, in hashtags, in nightly news segments, where the public demands justice and justice is pursued loudly. And this isn't about envy. It's about equity. It's about asking why some lives are mourned in prime time while others are quietly buried beneath bureaucracy and indifference. Because when justice is selective, silence becomes complicity. Her name was Natasha Soto Rivera. She was a Marine, a newlywed, a new mother. After her death, a GoFundMe campaign struggled to gain traction, leaving her grieving mother to raise a newborn baby boy alone and to try to scrape together funds for her headstone, for her grave. No national headlines, no public reckoning, no justice in the eyes of the world. Why? Why do some stories vanish while others dominate the news cycle? Why are we so unoutraged by the murders of women who are not white? And this isn't about just one case. It's about a pattern where women of color, especially Black and Latino women, are disproportionately erased from media narratives when they're harmed or killed. So something I never knew until I started researching for this case, but studies show that white victims are actually 4 times more likely to be pictured in moments of joy, surrounded by friends, smiling with family, succeeding, while Black victims are actually shown in these decontextualized or unflattering images, like outdated ID photos or even mugshots, even when those images have no bearing on the case at all, totally unrelated. And these framing choices aren't incidental. They will shape public empathy, public outrage, and ultimately accountability. And when the perpetrator wears a uniform, the silence gets louder. Military institutions often close ranks, citing privacy, protocol, or pending investigations. I see it all the time. But behind those closed doors, families are left to grieve alone. Justice becomes a private burden. And the public never learns what it should, that rage, trauma, and violence don't disappear just because somebody wears a uniform. And rage doesn't erupt in isolation, right? It builds layer by layer through trauma, conditioning, through silence. And in military culture, emotional control is prized and vulnerability is often seen as weakness. Rage can become a pressure cooker. Service members are trained to suppress emotion, to compartmentalize pain, to, quote, soldier on. But what happens when that suppression turns inwards? When it festers? Research shows that military personnel face some of the highest levels of occupational stress, with nearly 2 in 5 enlisted service members reporting severe stress. Combat exposure, family separation, and the constant demand for emotional restraint can lead to unresolved trauma. And when trauma goes untreated, it doesn't just disappear. It mutates into anger, into aggression, into violence. Anger is often a symptom of deeper wounds, PTSD, moral injury, depression, and grief. Veterans struggling with rage are more likely to experience breakdowns in relationships, in employment, and in day-to-day functioning. And yet many don't seek help because stigma runs deep. Especially among men in uniform. This episode unravels a story that begins in uniformed honor and ends in unimaginable loss. We explore the hidden layers of rage, the mental health crisis festering in silence, and the institutional blind spots that can leave military families vulnerable to violence, especially when the warning signs are written off as just part of the job. Now, Natasha, she was a force, a vibrant, brilliant young woman whose energy seemed to leap from every photo and social media post I saw. I scrolled through her mom and sister social media pages, just reading tribute after tribute, each one painting the same picture. Natasha was dynamite in a little package. She was apparently overflowing with words, opinions, and ideas, full of light. Her sister Marilyn called her the other half of her soul, the outgoing half. Where Marilyn went, Natasha went, and vice versa. Different personalities, Natasha the yin to Marilyn's yang, but an inseparable bond. And one thing was clear from every comment left by her loved ones, everyone who had the honor of knowing her. Natasha was going places. By the age of 20, Natasha had already accomplished what many can only dream of. She'd completed boot camp and was proudly serving in the U.S. Marine Corps. To put that into perspective, women comprise just 8% of active duty Marines, or just 13,000 service members. According to the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, only about 4% of Marine officers and 5% of enlisted personnel are women, making it the most male-dominated branch of the U.S. military. Now, I fell down a Reddit rabbit hole, reading posts from current and former Marines trying to understand why so few women choose the Marine Corps specifically. And the general consensus, granted, this is from anonymous contributors on Reddit, but the general consensus was that the Marines are the most physically demanding branch, often resulting in higher rates of injury. Their culture is famously intense, hyper-masculine, and even toxic in ways that might discourage women from joining. And yet, I found something surprising. Women are actually being retained at higher rates than their male counterparts across all roles and ranks. Not just in office jobs, I'm talking apples to apples, combat roles, technical fields, across the board. And I came across a detail in a poll of Marines that made sense to me, right? Male service members tend to prioritize deployment opportunities, while female Marines place highest value on tuition assistance benefits and the maternity leave in the military, which that tracks. When you consider how abysmal America is overall in supporting women through pregnancy and postpartum, especially with maternity leave, the military standard of 12 weeks actually stands out, which it should be the bare minimum, of course, but in reality, it's far from typical. Some women outside the military get just 2 weeks, some get none. So it makes complete sense that benefits like tuition reimbursement and reliable maternity leave, they're not just perks, they're lifelines. They directly impact retention rates for women in the service. And now Natasha, she was thriving, or from the outside looking in, she seemed to be thriving. Everyone thought she was living her dream. Newly married to a fellow Marine, a very proud first-time mother to an infant son who was the center of her world. And while beauty shouldn't be the headline, it's impossible not to acknowledge, Natasha was stunning. Some of her photos made me do a double take. She had that just unmistakable glow, the kind you see in Hollywood stars. She reminded me of, I think it's Vanessa Hudgens. Like if you look at her picture I put up with this episode, you'll see what I mean. Even if you don't see think she looks like Vanessa Hudgens. She's just undeniably beautiful, and it really stops you in your tracks. But she wasn't just beautiful on the outside. She was beautiful on the inside. She had it all. She had ambition. She had heart. She had strength. And the sky wasn't the limit for her. She had already started breaking through the sky. But what she didn't know was that the person closest to her was the one who would take it all away. Natasha was from the Bronx, New York. Loved ones said her whole life she passionately loved music and dancing. She was a really good listener to anyone who needed an ear. She was always willing to lend support and be that supportive friend. I found lots of people who loved and adored her, tons of photos. But when I tried to learn more about the man she married just 7 months before her death, there was very little to be found. Natasha's husband was Rodolfo Rivera Valencia. He was 24 years old at the time Natasha died. He was a fellow Marine and he was from Chicago. And that's pretty much the entire dossier. My search didn't turn up much. No personal anecdotes, no social media trail, barely a footprint. Just the act he committed. And a few glimpses of how his family behaved after the fact, but we'll get there. But for now, that's the tea. On November 2nd of 2018, Natasha and her husband Rodolfo attended the Marine Ball, and they were stationed in Quantico, Virginia. And every year, Marines gather to commemorate their founding back in 1775 when the Second Continental Congress resolved to raise 2 battalions, establishing the Continental Marines. The night that Rodolfo and Natasha went to the ceremony, the Marines were celebrating 243 years of service. Now, I've been to my share of military soirees events with my ex's Special Forces squadron, but never a Marine Ball. From what I've heard, here's the vibe. You shell out serious cash for tickets, a hotel room, maybe a long drive. Drinks run you like $17 a pop. Your outfit's probably going to need alterations. And when you finally walk in, everyone's drinking. At least one person, and usually more, gets too drunk and embarrasses themselves in front of command. That command's probably participating. There's always someone playing uniform police, someone losing a medal off their uniform somehow. There may be even some Brass's kids running around. Nobody dances at first, but by the end, everyone's on the floor. It's chaotic, it's messy, and it's kind of a rite of passage. You're probably going to have a blast. You might not remember it or make the best impression, but you're going to have a blast. And I always say, don't shit where you eat. But I come from a very different world. Marines talk about those nights like they're legendary, even if they're fuzzy. And yeah, leadership is often right there in the mix. In my corporate world, in the healthcare world, getting wasted in front of your boss is what I like to call a CLM, a career-limiting move. But the military isn't that world. And if anyone's earned the right to cut loose, it's the men and women who risk their lives for all of us. But for Natasha, this night wasn't going to be what she hoped. I can only imagine how excited she must have been. Her baby boy was with a trusted person being loved on. She was getting a much-needed night out. She was dressed to the nines, standing beside her new husband. By all accounts, Natasha lived for nights like this. Music, movement, joy. Dancing wasn't just something she did. It was who she was. This was supposed to be her moment. Romantic, light, feeling free. But what Natasha and her loved ones didn't know was that this night would be Natasha's last dance. The morning after the Marine Corps ball, Rodolfo Rivera Valencia made a 911 call from the Marriott Crystal Gateway Hotel in Arlington, Virginia. He told the dispatcher that his wife, Natasha Soto Rivera, was unconscious. And then almost casually, he said the words, "I think I killed her." It was November 3rd of 2018. Valencia admitted he'd blacked out. He said he drank way too much, that he had an anger problem. His memory was fuzzy, but he believed he'd gone into a rage and killed Natasha. And then he woke up, found her next to him unresponsive, and he did nothing. He didn't try to help her. He didn't call 911. He just sat there. Maybe it was painfully obvious that nothing could be done. Or maybe he was weighing his next move, coldly calculating what came next. I don't know. It's senseless, all of it. I don't even know what part is like the most outrageous. The violence, the indifference, the casual confession. How do you just wake up beside someone you say you love after realizing you've taken their life and not even try to undo it? Arlington detective Jasmine Shawn wrote that Natasha had injuries to her neck consistent with strangulation and bruising to her arms and face, indicating a brutal beating. She was already dead when police and medical personnel arrived at the motel. Detective Shawn wrote that Rodolfo said he drank to the point of blacking out following the Marine Corps dinner and ceremony and had no memory of what happened the night before. He said he woke up the next morning with his dead wife beside him and did not render medical aid or immediately call 911. Rodolfo was arrested on site and he was sent to holding at the Arlington County Detention Center. Now, I personally first came across Natasha's story years ago. I've waited for it to hit the news, for traction, for demands, for answers, for any information about Rodolfo's trial or sentencing. But every time I searched, it was the same. Nothing beyond the week of her murder. No updates after his arrest in early November of 2018. And it's strange, right? Because Rodolfo called in the murder and confessed. He was charged within days. You'd think that would have been all over headlines. But Natasha had a few things the media doesn't like to address. She was a woman of color, and her murderer was a Marine, so it just disappeared. And I really have wanted to do a story on this case, but I just really struggled to find any details. So I dug deeper. I actually subscribed to the Fredericksburg Freelance Star, the local Virginia paper that initially covered the case. That's where I got the quote from Detective Sean. Despite the name, it's not free, but only the original article was archived, so I kept digging. I bought a criminal record report for Rodolfo, for his family, for anyone. I found a case number eventually. I traced it to the county court. I paid probably too much for umpteen pages of court documents that I've just poured over, almost impossible to decipher. But eventually, here's what I pieced together. The charges were first and second degree murder, and they were filed on February 26th of 2019. So I guess that's 3 months after her murder, right? November 2018 to February. Yeah, basically. And the trial began in July of 2020. But in the first few days, Rodolfo and his attorney must have recognized the signs of bleakness for his case, because just a few days later, on August 5th of 2020, almost 2 years after her murder, at 9:30 a.m., Rodolfo took a plea deal. He pled guilty to second-degree murder. Now, according to Natasha's sister's social media, he pled for just 20 years. That's the only place I could find the year number. She said he got 20 years. And the family expressed relief and a sense that justice was served. And I get that, right? They're probably just grateful that he's not going to be around while they raise Natasha's little boy. They don't have to worry about that. But if it were me, if it were my daughter, 20 years would feel like a slap in the face. Natasha was murdered at just 20 years old. Her life stolen before it had the chance to unfold. Rodolfo, only 24 at the time, he could be free by his early 40s or sooner, young enough to marry again, raise other children, and live a full life. If he serves every single day of that 20-year sentence and the clock started around the time of the murder, he'll walk out just months after what would have been Natasha's 40th birthday. And let's be honest, 40 isn't the end of anything. It's the beginning of so much. And I say this as someone over 40. Life doesn't fade as you age. If anything, it deepens, it expands. There's still so much to learn, to love, to build, to become. And so I ask you, how is 20 years justice? Like, in my opinion, I feel like 20 years should be the starting point. Like, anyone convicted of this kind of murder, they get 20 years as a minimum sentence for the murder. And then you add on the victim's stolen years based on life expectancy. So in 2018, the average life expectancy for a woman was 81. Natasha was 20. That's 61 extra years he stole. Rodolfo should have received a total of 81 years minimum. Eye for an eye. Now, I know I'm ranting. You know, I all rant. But here's what eats at me. 20 years in prison is not the kind of justice we imagine when we lose someone violently. With good behavior, perks, access to dating and even marriage, 3 hots and a cot, it's really humane, especially compared to the brutality these offenders inflict. Meanwhile, a beloved sister, daughter, mommy, and friend is gone forever. And the details really haunt me. You know, he said he just lost his temper. I can't stop replaying what that might have meant. Their newborn son was just 5 weeks old. So I wonder, did Natasha get to the hotel and just miss her baby? Did she just realize it was too soon to be away and she wanted to get home? Was Rodolfo upset by that? Maybe she realized it just felt too soon to be away and wanted to go home, and Rodolfo lost it because he wanted to have a night at the hotel with his wife. Which leads me to my next question. Was a rape kit performed? I ask because I wonder if he expected intimacy and Tasha said, oh, we got to follow medical advice. I have to wait at least 6 weeks. Think about it. Postpartum guidelines recommend 6 weeks before intercourse. And sure, some ignore that. Others need much longer. I'm sure some of you listeners are like, we didn't wait 6 weeks, but everybody is different. And I know there's others who are like, I didn't let my husband come near me for 6 months, let alone 6 weeks. But I'll say this, I worked in OBGYN as a patient caregiver. The 6 weeks isn't just a suggestion. It's a medical necessity. Your body needs to heal, and there can be serious medical repercussions for women's bodies if they have sex too soon. Not always, but enough so that medical guidelines suggest 6 weeks. And yet, time and time again, I hear these stories of women who say their husbands kept guilt tripping them, kept pressuring them until they gave in. And they didn't want to, but they gave in. That is not okay. Rodolfo lost his temper at the hotel after the ball, and he savagely beat her and strangled her, and their baby son was at home just shy of 6 weeks old. Did Natasha say no to sex? Did that set him off? Now, this is complete conjecture on my part, but it's worth asking. And while we're here unpacking this whole bad temper excuse, too many women stay in abusive relationships, even men with women who have really bad tempers, because they've convinced themselves they're not abusive. They just have a temper. Now, I'm impatient. I curse. I get irritable. But I've never hit anyone. I've never punched a hole in the drywall. I've never hurt a dog or a child. Having emotions is human. Using them to cause harm is a choice. There's a difference, and it matters. Frustration isn't an excuse for cruelty. And yelling should never be normal in a relationship. If you don't know that, let me say it again. Your partner should never yell at you. One of my best friends, shout out to Alex, she got out of an abusive marriage a few years ago. She's now in the happiest and healthiest relationship of her life, in fact, newly engaged. And she posted something on her Instagram recently, and it stuck with me. It was a montage of her and her fiance, Greg, and the caption said something like, "And then you find out that you don't ever have to be yelled at by your partner, like ever." And that hit me because a lot of people don't know that. They think yelling is like a personality quirk, something to excuse. When he's nice, he's the best. But sometimes he yells. No, like you literally don't have to be yelled at ever. When I first started dating my forever husband, Michael, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. He was just really patient and even-keeled. Like my dog, I had a puppy, and he would chew up his stuff. And I'd brace for the fallout, but he never yelled. He never lost his temper. He never lashed out, not at me, not at the dog. I can't count how many times in my abusive relationship that I tried to take the fall for some tiny infraction, like scrambling to clean up a wrapper my dog had pulled out, or just like quickly wipe up paw prints on the tile. It's so silly to think of those things looking back. But back then it caused me like panic. I'd race around to cover up any trace of my dog being a dog just to avoid a blow up by my ex. And now looking back, that mindset just feels so unreal. Like, I think for the first year or two with my now husband, maybe longer, I waited for the change, for my new partner to slip his mask. I waited for the yelling. Like, oh yeah, he's going to yell too. But it never came. Over a decade later, it still hasn't. Yeah, we have disagreements. We talk it out. That's totally normal. But he has never once yelled at me. He's never called me a name. He's never punched a hole in a wall or broken anything in anger. And that should be what normal is. And if this is the first time you're hearing that, like pause for a minute. Really sit with it and ask yourself what you've been normalizing. You know, something that hit me really hard while I was learning about Natasha, I was scrolling through her family's timeline on Facebook. It was either her sister or her mom. There was a post from August 19th of 2018, and Natasha and Rodolfo were celebrating their baby shower. And she was just radiant. She was beaming. He looked proud. He was very, very handsome. He was happy. You see the photos and think like, this couple is so beautiful. They're so young and in love. They're about to welcome a baby boy into the world. Like they have so much excitement in front of them. They have it all. But the very next post above that baby shower photo was December. A photo of a newborn baby boy gently being bathed, and the caption read, "I see Natasha in him," followed by broken hearts. In just 4 months, this picture-perfect couple goes from baby shower smiles to a murder charge, from preparing for new life to Natasha's life being taken, her husband behind bars, and their infant son left an orphan. It's staggering. It's hard to wrap your head around. It's even harder to accept. Now, I couldn't find anything substantial on Rodolfo or his family, just a few heated posts from Natasha's family on their page. And I honestly, who could blame them? Because even after murdering Natasha, after ripping her away from her family and her son, Rodolfo and his family had the audacity to pursue legal action to try and gain custody of that baby boy for his side of the family. Like, what? Seriously? I cannot even imagine what that felt like for Natasha's mother, who, by the way, is the one raising him, to have the only living piece of her daughter in her arms and then watch the man who murdered that baby's mommy try and take him away. It's unthinkable. By all accounts, Natasha's mom is a loving, devoted, great mom. Her children are a testament to that. So why should she be forced to hand over that beautiful boy to the family of the man who stole Natasha's life and let them shape the story that he grows up with, maybe even give Rodolfo access to him, be it photos or physical visits, whatever have you? Like, no, absolutely not. All right, I'm on a tangent again, which I honestly probably should have called this podcast On a Tangent with Tressa. But anyways, here we are. Let's sum this up. This husband brutally murders a wife and then quietly slips under the radar with a 20-year sentence. No media frenzy, no lasting public outrage, just a slow shuffle into obscurity. And he's nearly 6 years in already. Do we really think his temper is going to get rehabilitated behind bars? I don't. Not for a second. It's outrageous. And so to the family of Natasha Soto, who are raising her beautiful little boy with her big, beautiful eyes, they're mourning her loss. They're feeling that absence every single day. I want to say this. Justice was not served. Natasha deserves so much more. You all deserve so much more. And I intend to make sure more people know Natasha's name, see her beautiful face, and learn about the extraordinary woman she was. She was a woman with a soul on fire, a passion that few possess, and a heart that gave everything. Natasha, we honor you. We thank you for your service. We will not let you be forgotten. Now, I do want to share a few important updates. If you follow me on social media or listen to the mini episode I released about the Marine wife found at Marine Corps Bay, Hawaii, you know I've been trying to spotlight this case since it happened almost a year ago in September of 2024. And yet it still hasn't broken into mainstream media. To this day, I remain the only media voice publicly naming the victim Ruby Tenorio, married name Alcantar. I have worked really hard to try to get this story out, but once again, we're looking at a woman of color murdered by a Marine on military base housing. And the silence is just deafening. But this past week, a highly credible source connected to the case reached out to me. We had a really long, deeply revealing conversation, and what I learned confirms that there's far more to the story than what's been reported. Nothing's been reported, so there's just far more to the story. Much of it casts a harsh light on the military's role and culpability in her murder. I'm trying to choose my words very carefully, but for the integrity of the case, I have to be really, really cautious about what I share publicly. But what I can confirm is this. Ruby's husband, Alonzo Alcantar, is currently charged with first-degree murder, premeditated, along with second-degree murder and obstruction of justice. And I can't say much more right now, but I will say this. He was already on police's radar, military police. It was very preventable, and I do believe the military bears responsibility in key parts of what led to her death. My hunch, I fear Alonzo will plead out because they want to just quietly make this go away. This happened at the same time they were trying to find Misha Johnson's body. So they didn't want to draw attention to it. It's right where Dana Alotaibi was murdered. Kayla Holder. So many in Hawaii. But my fear is he'll quietly slip into a reduced sentence. And if or when that happens, when this is no longer in court, I will be back here to lay everything bare with that source. I'll share the full scope of what actually led up to Ruby's murder and the systemic failures surrounding it. But for now, I have to do what's best for the case. I'm afraid if I say too much, charges will get dropped. What I can do is I can keep saying her name, Ruby Tenorio, and I use her maiden name because that's how her parents honored her in her obituary. Ruby Tenorio murdered in September of 2024, allegedly by her husband who remains in custody, and still I'm the only person naming her. I am going to put her obituary in the show notes so you can go see her beautiful face and read about her. You know, I talked to a lot of victims' families, and a lot of them don't like that the media use pictures of the couples because they don't want to see those pictures of like the married couples splashed up there, maybe when that man was still deceiving them, right? And they don't want to look at his married name. So I try to use maiden names and pictures just of the victims to honor those families' wishes. Now, if you've been following along, another case I've been asking for anonymous sources is the naval wife killed in a Japanese hotel in October of 2024 by her husband, a naval officer. And I've now confirmed her name is Jessie Arguinzoni. I may be saying that wrong, Olson. But I have all of the horrific details, including her autopsy, the deeply disturbing conclusions drawn from it, the context in which everything unfolded. And it gets worse. He's already entered a plea, been sentenced, and that sentence he's looking to possibly get reduced. Now, the family is being incredibly thoughtful about how the narrative unfolds, and I want to honor that. And I'm in contact with them. And in a coming episode, I'll be bringing on a family representative to share the full story of what happened to Jessie in their words and with all the information only law enforcement and the family is privy to at this point. So, that is coming soon. Now I have exciting news. I am thrilled to announce that I'm going to be a featured creator at CrimeCon next month in Denver. It's an incredible opportunity to connect with fellow true crime advocates and professionals, family who have been directly impacted by the cases we cover and care about. The lineup is absolutely stacked. Like my head's spinning beyond the countless true crime podcasts you know and love. Like so many of my favorites, like Annie Elise from Seriously and Kendall Ray and her husband Josh from Kendall Ray True Crime Show and Mile Higher, the true crime guys. Like so many people. Also voices like Colby Ryan, Lori Vallow Daybell's surviving son, Gabby Petito's family, who they continue to advocate for change. I'm really hoping to speak with Joseph Petito. He founded a nonprofit dedicated to raising awareness for Black and Brown missing individuals. He's just deeply inspiring. Nancy Grace will be there. I feel like her and I could really go off on some tangents. John Ramsey, John Benet's father's there. Josh Mankiewicz from Dateline. So many people. Actually, Ice-T's hosting an event, which is kind of funny, I guess, because he's on SVU, but this is just scratching the surface. The guest list is a mile long. If you're curious, check it out at crimecon.com. I'm already in conversations with several victims' families, podcast hosts, other major voices in the space about how I can collaborate with them, and I cannot wait to bring those collaborations and episodes to you soon. Okay, now I'm going to shill a little bit. I'm going to beg. I know it's not cute. It's not a cute look. But if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, could you please leave me a review? Click the stars, type a few words. I know it seems really trivial, but promise you it's not. It really, it amplifies the podcast. That's actually how all the sources, anonymous sources, people connected to cases usually find me. Yeah, it's everything. And actually, one of my favorite podcasts just left me a written review and then gave me a shout out on their show. I was on my treadmill when I heard it and I almost fell off because it was just wasn't expecting it. It meant the world. So I want to return the favor. The podcast, one of my very favorites, it's called Crime, Wine, and Chaos. It's such a fun vibe. Two sisters, they're hilarious. They're total potty mouse. They're from the Pacific Northwest, which is where I'm originally from. They're just a blast. It feels like you're hanging out with them during their episode. Each week, one sister brings a crime story and the other brings a story of chaos, not necessarily a crime. It's just something like wild from history. It's so good. You've got to check it out. Go show them some love with a good review. And while you're at it, show me a little love too. Thank you for being here. And until next time, stay safe. If you're trying to leave an abuser, do not tell them. Do not go meet with them one last time. Do not let them talk you into meeting up so they can gain closure. Just go. Please stay safe. If you need help, there are international resources linked in my show notes. If you're a veteran struggling with your mental health, please dial 988 and press 1. Thanks.